Good evening. Welcome back to Corruption Incorporated. This is your host, Ionicles. I realize that perhaps if you're just joining us, you might not know what's going on here, so I'm going to start doing like a little episodic recap. I've been fighting corruption in this country for the past 7.5 years without a lawyer. I went to theater school. I'm a born American citizen. I know I have a very odd name. And on top of that, I feel like now I've spent my whole adult life trying to figure out how can we get out of this mess. We are drowning in corruption in this culture, the world over. In previous episodes, I have boiled it down to anything you could look at that you might not like, where something you might be able to say is corrupt or is happening that ought not be happening. We can boil it all down to an education problem. Everything you might be able to point to at its root is an education problem. A basic moral education problem on a global scale. I'm right now engaged in legal warfare against not one, not two, but 3 multi-billion-dollar corporations all at once. 2 in trial court and 1 in arbitration. And what I'm trying to do is to start to help people understand that it does not take a degree in law to stand up and do something about what's happening. I can't tell you what you should do because I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving you advice. All I can talk about is what I've done. One of the reasons why I once again got far enough out of my own head to start filming the other day is I found out that the people who are representing Coinbase is one of the companies I'm fighting right now. The law firm, I found out it's pronounced Bowman Croup Bossy, with offices in New York and Norfolk, Virginia, are not on Google Maps, and lit my blood on fire all over again. Because that means that if they've been doing business as that name law firm for over a year, they report on their website that someone over there gets the gist of what I'm saying here and doesn't care. Because in my opinion, they appear to be consciously seeking to avoid public scrutiny. For instance, the Coinbase headquarters in Delaware, which you can look up on Google Maps, has 0 positive reviews. I believe every one of them is a 1-star review. Now I have put a review on there. I think I put my email address on there too, so if you want to reach out to me, you can. Just go look up my email on there because I'd like to hear from you if you know anything, or if you know anything about that law firm. I don't like doing this. This is not fun for me. I don't subscribe to what some people call smear campaigns. This is not why I'm doing this. I don't hate these people. I just wrote them in email tonight, 2 emails. I'm going to do 2 today, 3, 4, 5 ad infinitum until they won't even negotiate. Their lawyer, Allison Melton, is just disqualifying every arbitrator out of hand because she can. It's going to force me to have to go to a local court and have an arbitrator appointed by a court. I think it's a little bit too despicable for words and for me not to address it. Today I want to talk, I think I'll talk more on the next episode. I was actually just filming and my phone died. But it was kind of a long video, so maybe now we'll get to do the summary. I want to talk about history a little bit today, and something that I'm calling the dream that was us, the dream that was US, the dream that was the United States. Because fundamentally, in terms of nature, in terms of even just energy, spiritually, however you want to frame it. Anything that prefers to remain in the shadows, prefers to remain hidden, historically not awesome. We can remember The Lord of the Rings, the greatest fantasy story ever written, in my opinion. And if you've read the book, there's this almost, it's unsettling and kind of heartbreaking part where the character Smeagol, or Gollum, who finds the ring, ends up taking a life in order to possess this object, life of his friend. And then eventually it corrupts him so much, so completely consumes him, that in the book he starts not enjoying being in the sun. It's so harsh, the light, and starts looking at the mountain and thinking about how cool and quiet and dark it would be, and how nice under that mountain. And eventually crawls into a hole somewhere, a cave, and just passes out of historical record for almost like an age of the earth. It gives him unnatural long life, is the words they use in the film. A company that prefers to hide, a law firm that prefers to represent companies like Coinbase, that I can prove this. I have an ocean of photographic evidence that Coinbase is corrupt. In summary, what they've done, what they did when I was trying to trade with them a few years ago, I had never invested before, and now me and countless others, for the rest of our lives, have to live with the knowledge that the first time we ever tried to invest, we were swindled. They went out of their way on their website and application, enticing people to come and give them money to trade, that, it's so much cheaper if you do it this way. Don't buy Bitcoin and then there's fees, and then sell Bitcoin when you want Ethereum, for instance. There's fees. It's cheaper to convert. We give you this option to convert between two different cryptocurrencies. And we only take 2%, they said, from those transactions. Well, I caught them taking over 10% on many occasions. Sometimes I think it was almost 15%. They even wrote software into their application that in the middle of a trade said, to ensure you get a fair price, break this up into a smaller amount. But what that really is doing is making it easier to conceal what they were doing. Because if they take 10 cents off your dollar move from Uniswap to Doge, who's coming after them for that? They're playing the odds. And again, historically, not awesome. We can roll our eyes all till kingdom come if I bring up films and pop culture and stuff. It's fictional, but these things are based in reality. They grow out of reality the way we have as living things. Go revisit the story of The Rainmaker, or see it for the first time if you haven't. Francis Ford Coppola film starring Matt Damon. It's about a young lawyer, and he finds it's a shady insurance company, and eventually, without spoiling it, I would never do that, they wind up with someone who worked there and was let go in the middle of this legal battle on the witness stand, saying that the company was playing the odds that people would give up. I believe it's clear from what I've seen, in my opinion, that Coinbase is playing the odds. And they wrote software to take more from people who have less. That's unspeakably low, to steal from the poor and the needy. for the sake of those who are just stacking coins on top of a mountain of what they don't even need to get by and pay bills and feed their loved ones. There was a dream that was us. And there's people like this lawyer for Coinbase, Allison Melton, going around. I believe she's in Norfolk, Virginia. I went to high school in Virginia. It's very unfortunate. I also went to school in New York. It's like, but going around telling themselves they're decent, hardworking folk, but I've said this to them now in writing, and I've said this on a previous episode. There's no reasonable conclusion to draw from what's happening right now, except that the quality of life of their own descendants will be lowered in the future. It's like they're to be complicit in this, to be taking cash from a company that by all rights, if there's real justice anywhere in this world, should become a pariah among us, like toxic waste. Ooh, like I don't want anything to do with that. You work for Coinbase? Oh man, can I help you polish your resume? Like, can I help you find another job? Like, can you leave that job? Like, can you get on unemployment for a little while? Like, get out of there. Have nothing to do with those people. If they couldn't get a lawyer, if no one would take the job, that would send a message. But we're surrounded by people like Bowman Croup Bossy, that firm, and Allison Melton, who will take money from them. And even if they have reason to believe that it's been pilfered from the poor, they don't care. And they call themselves Americans. And today I said to this woman in writing, I said, I beg to differ, sister. The foundation of this country is the idea that we're all equal here. And you would never want me stealing from you. I mean, assuming you're in your right mind, no reasonable person would ever want someone stealing from them, lying to their face, and cheating them. And of all the infinite possibilities of futures to come, I see no brighter tomorrow in which these companies and those who stand with them don't start to get called out. And we as a society, en masse, large scale social movement, we engage in large scale social movement away from this, away from the shadows, into the light. Because this is exactly what spawned this country. If you aren't a student of history, I wasn't a very good student of history when I was in high school. I had to study U.S. history. I didn't even take the AP exam because I left and went to Japan for a year in the middle of European history, and then I had to relearn the whole thing, and it was the worst AP exam I ever took. I did very poorly on it. But my own history was so troubled, I didn't like history at that point. But I do remember some things, and I know some things about U.S. history, and some things that I know, for instance, is the English king was behaving like a spoiled brat with them. I mean, these people were working this land. There was Native Americans who were feeling like their lands were being stolen. They were, and bless their hearts. And there was violent conflicts going on, and these people were dogging it out in these colonies. It was not an easy life. And they were just trying to live and feed their children and start something new, like brave new world. Like they got on a boat, they left everything behind. The odds of them going back are not that great. And they were trying to negotiate with the English king. And he was having them go all over the place, all the way to Timbuktu to have a meeting with his delegates. And then they'd get there on horseback or on covered wagon or something like that. That's what they had back then. They didn't have rubber tires on their sports car, you know what I mean? They weren't taking like the Hyperloop. And they were getting there and there was no one even there. They were exhausted and they were getting there. It was like the guy thousands of miles away over an ocean was, nah. Because he's got everything he needs. He's encrusted in gold, this guy. What does he know about what we're suffering here? So they put it down. It was resolved. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We are all created equal. No matter what you look like, no matter what your skin color is, you're equal. And yes, we're going out of this barbaric culture where hundreds of millions of years you had to worry about, maybe winding up as some other living thing's meal at night. And yes, they had slaves, some of them, but that lasted less than 100 years. The dream was that we could do this ourselves. So standing around and pretending like, well, I'm a lawyer, I'm just doing my job, this is just how it is, and like acting like, or crinkling your nose up. I mean, the impression I get from this, my countrywoman, my fellow American Allison Melton, is it's almost like this nose crinkling, like ultra entitled, like, how dare he? He's not even negotiating. Every arbitrator just disqualified to make things as hard as possible. I've got these people. I can prove it. No matter what the law says. But I'm trying to go through the proper channels, and they're not playing fair. They're not honoring our legacy in this country. And they want to, it's like there's so many people like this around. And they don't want to rub shoulders with the idea that they're the weak links among us. Because they'll take money that's been stolen. And they'll, use it for themselves. And they'll go tuck their kids in or something. Or, and pop a bottle of wine and sit down. And, they're okay with it. And they call themselves Americans. Americans originally was, we can do better. We can stand up together. And if we had all just been back then standing around with our hands on our hips, watching what the founding fathers were doing, this would never have happened. This would never have become the country that we've grown up in and live in. It's under serious threat right now. Possibly the worst threat it's been under since the Civil War. In 160 years, this is the worst situation right now. And people are so desperate for change, they're turning to people who have demonstrated through their entire lives that they're immoral people. Swindlers, tricksters, charlatans. And they're like, yep, that'd be a good leader. History says otherwise. Other-directed thinking is the hallmark of wisdom in a human being. The arrival of selflessness, the understanding of the value of that, taking oneself out of the equation. What would it be like? What is it like to be on the receiving end of this? People like Brian Armstrong that run Coinbase and that Dara Khosrowshahi that runs Uber. I'll talk about Uber. I got a lot to say about Uber. Worst company I've ever encountered in my entire life. We'll talk about it now. That guy, Khosrowshahi, I read up on him. My understanding is his family was in the Iranian Revolution in 1989 and they had to leave their country because they were part of this wealthy caste that was oppressing this large population. Throughout our history, anytime that's happened, a few people have lorded it over and made it harder for a large number of people. It's always ended in violent usurpation and overthrow of that regime or whatever. This guy had to leave his own country when he was this young boy. I think he was about maybe around 10 years old or something. I'm not sure exactly. In 1989, he had to flee his country. is there was violence. And what did he learn in 40 something years on planet Earth since then? Only to go over and cross an ocean and set up shop and start stealing from another different kind of people? Dude, you learned nothing. But these people, they don't understand that. They don't understand. They don't understand that there's no way forwards here where they're not made examples of. There's no brighter future in which they're not seen in hindsight when the history books are being written as not the best examples of how things should be done. Because if this status quo continues to develop, it is their own descendants who will suffer. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Either suffer economically or suffer because of the overthrow, the revolution that will come. I don't think it has to be a violent one this time. I'm trying to help engender a nonviolent revolution. That's what we're doing here. That's why this is called Revolution 101. Because you can help this. You can hit subscribe. You can tell your friends, hey man, there's this guy, he went to theater school and he's taken down billion-dollar companies with no help. Whoa, check this out. He's a weird dude with his weird name. And maybe you think I'm crazy. I don't care. People have been telling me I'm crazy since I was a kid. What's happening now in our world is crazy, in my humble opinion. And it's never going to get better by a government passing a law from the top down that makes everything fine and equal again. We've tried that at different times and places in our history. It's called communism. It doesn't work. Only large-scale social movement, like I said earlier, from the ground up, you keeping your side of the street clean and saying something when you see something. So if you know anything about this, I would like to hear from you. If you're tired of this, I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to talk to you maybe at some point. Maybe our paths will cross. But we can do better, because what's happening right now, this is not the dream that was us, was the United States. This is a nightmare. I think it's time we wake up from it. So I'm going to keep filming as much as possible. I was thrilled when I got home. I had time to do this, even though the phone died. Yeah, I'll keep going. I should hopefully have some good news in the big case, my big trial court case this week. Been waiting for a couple months. And we'll see. I don't know where this is going, but I heard recently, you're on the path when it disappears. So I was like, all right, I like that. That resonates right now. I wish I'd started doing this like 8 years ago when I started all this. Should have been screaming it from the mountaintop. Well, maybe not screaming, but it should have been loudly proclaiming it with a full voice and a full heart from the mountaintops. Because we're only here a moment after all, you guys. If we're not leaving things better than we found them, if we're subscribing to any philosophy in which the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many, then we're not really gonna live long and prosper. What these people are doing is rightly called insanity, should be rightly called insanity. Because if they looked at the big picture, they'd see that to behave this way is insane. There's enough to go around. There's enough to share. Look at all this trouble these people are causing this Coinbase situation over a few $1,000. And over greed, I have reason to believe, I have no reason not to believe, these lawyers are offered some sort of a bonus is baked into their terms of service. If they get a favorable ruling, they get like a few grand extra. It won't even cross their minds to just like, all right, we can get it thrown out and just split it with me. Be over. That. But no, it's that's the impression that you get dealing with lawyers like this, corporate defense attorneys. It shouldn't pay well, you know. It pays well because it's corrupt. Anyway, until next time, peace be with you all. Peace be with you all. Lots of love to you. I know this is such a tough time to be living through, but let's consider that maybe we'll be looking back and we'll be all old fogies in a few decades, and all these young cats running around and be like, oh man, what was it like living through a time like that? And we'll just yawn and say, woof, how much time you got? I hope so. I hope the best for you and your loved ones. Oh, this is 26 minutes. Well, I also heard recently that people are moving away from things like online dating, and longer podcasts are getting, listened to all the way through. People are recognizing different ways and different parts of their lives that some things that have become mainstream are not so healthy. So we'll let this one stand at like 27 minutes. I think the other one would have been longer anyway. I could do this all day, like Captain America says. So, what is it? Oh, it's the Soul Stone today. There's a story about this. It wasn't intentional, I promise. This was like over 20 years ago in Japan, way before I even heard of any of these things. But anyway, that's it for tonight. See you all very soon. If you've been here with me the whole time, power to you. Maybe hit subscribe, maybe tell your friends. That's probably the best way to help at this point. And we'll keep going. Hopefully have some good news soon. All right, good night.